Okay, it's official. I have started reading The Changeling, Book of Qualities by Aiden Watcher. I have just finished the introduction and I thought I would talk about it a little bit. But I think I want to show you the table of contents first because then it really gives you an idea as to what kind of book this really is. So here's the table of contents, and we have introduction, a book of qualities, and then it goes into these numbered, I guess you can call them exercises. So a witch, and they're all a witch. So a witch seeks power, a witch claims power, a witch shapes energy, a witch is crafty, a witch is a vessel, a witchcraft is a vessel, and then a witch is a vessel, and so on and so forth. And each one of these is only a couple pages, well, maybe more like 3 on average, pages long per number. So it goes up to 55. So it gives you quite a bit of like exercises or things to put into practice. So in the introduction, Aiden does a really cool thing where he defines witchcraft or what it means to him. And it's not like, here's the definition for me and that's it. But he adds like a bunch of different components from different places in his mind as he seems to be kind of doing like a brainstorm of what is witchcraft for him, but in a more organized manner than I'm making it seem for sure. And I thought I would read like little bits and pieces of that because that section of definition of witchcraft or defining witchcraft is like more than 3 pages long. So it's not like short. But anyways, so one of the parts I really liked is when he says, witchcraft is a practice of resistance to the control of mind, action, and belief by outside forces. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that practice of resistance is actually what led me to the craft in the first place. So it wasn't like I want to do the craft because it's cool or it looks cool, and then now I have to try to make it match some type of philosophy of mine. It was more like, this is what I need, and through finding what I need, I found myself practicing. It's what resonated with me the most. It's what provided me the amount of freedom that I so desperately craved that I wasn't getting anywhere else, with the least amount or practically no judgment, depending on what circles you're in. So that was like a huge relief for me personally. And then he also says, the witch tends to be an outlier, living apart from the cultural norms, even when choosing to pass or pretending to fit in as a strategy. And this I also hold close. I also hold this pretty close to my heart because I feel like I've always tried to pass as a strategy of some sorts, even on a micro scale sometimes. Like sometimes it was just taking out my piercings or covering my hair with something so you can tell it was colored. And then sometimes it'd be more extreme where I was completely shielding parts of my life, my personality, and things that I even liked just because I was trying to fit in, you know? So that resonated a lot too. And like I said, he has a lot of tidbits in the intro section. Like, there's more things that I want to share, but you just got to read the book. But then he finishes that chapter, the introduction chapter, by talking about changelings, because that is the name of the book. And he talks like a mini paragraph about the lore of changelings, what it is, if you're not familiar. Then he goes into saying that he likes this term for many who are called to the craft. There is a feeling of otherness, of not being quite like those around them. This is one reason why we see a good number of folks who consider themselves non-binary, neurodiverse, or in other ways outside of the neurotypical and heteronormative world involved in witchcraft. And I really resonated with that because I've noticed that pattern. I feel like it's kind of hard to avoid seeing that pattern if you're paying attention. You see that a lot of practitioners, witches, magicians, the like, tend to be queer. And I don't mean queer as in their sexual preference, even though that can also be included in that, but queer as in their strangeness, their otherness. And I love that because that makes me feel like I'm even more where I'm supposed to be. So I just thought that was a beautiful thing that he wrote. And then I'll finish talking about the intro with one more thing. Witches may not be physically different than other people, but there is a kind of psychic shift that is often present. On top of this sense of otherness, magic is an art of change. Witches work to change the world, their circumstances, and especially, most critically, themselves. In my mind, changeling is a fine word for the kind of being who practices such a craft. It's just like chef's kiss. The intro is just perfect. I love the intro so much. So I'm going to keep reading, and hopefully, like, I don't come on here and have to share 20 things every single time I pick up this book, because if that's the case, then this is going to be like a 30-part, like, series, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm doing my best to get through this book without having to have a comment about every single page, but right now, this is where we're at. Okay, so I do want to point out something just, like, cutesy. So he writes on page 16, mostly what has held me back in my life is fear. Fear is the great controller, or as they Bene Gesserit in Dune say, the mind killer. Now, when I read that, I was just like so giddy, because I'm actually a fan of Dune, more specifically a fan of the Bene Gesserit. And if you've noticed, you may not have noticed, because unless you were like really looking at the background of some of my videos, I actually have that written down. Let me show it to you, because it's not technically written down. You get what I'm saying once I show it to you. Okay, so up here. The eye is missing though, so pay no mind to that. But yeah, so I was like, yes, he used, you know, a reference to what I consider to be some of the most powerful beings, witches, in like pop culture. But I don't know if he's an actual fan or if he just used it as reference, because when he wrote this book, I think it was around the time that Dune was actually either coming out or had just come out, but that's neither here nor there. I have a really hard time with my words, because I'm used to just talking to myself more than anything, or with people that my words don't matter that much to, I guess. No, that doesn't sound right. I don't know. Whatever. Moving on. Okay, so as a primer to starting the practices section, he tells you, or he gives you a guide of how you can proceed to do that. And this is another reason why I think it's a good beginner book. And I numbered them down, like I wrote in this. So he really gives you this guide of how you want to go about using this book. And I think this is something that some beginner books don't talk about in this way. But this did remind me of the Rebel Witch book written by Kellyanne. Which I also think is a great beginner book, because at the end of every single one of the chapters of Rebel Witch, she has you, she asks you questions, and then she either asks you questions and or gives you a journaling prompt, and that's kind of how you get to know who you are as a witch. And yeah, I think I need to stop right there, because I'm getting called to do something, because I'm supposed to be in the middle of doing something, but then I thought I'd record this real quick. So yeah, after this, which is another 2 pages, then it's going to be going into the practices, and I'm going to attempt as many as I can as I'm reading this book. So the first 3 practices were all about power. It was a witch seeks power, claims power, and a witch shapes energy. Well, the third one, it could be debatable whether that's still under the same thing, but it is to me. I haven't read the next one, which is A Witch is Crafty. So obviously these are all related at some level, but I kind of wanted to sum up those first 3, or my thoughts on them, I should say. So the first one, A Witch Seeks Power, that's where you're actually given like a working to do, which includes candle working and a spiritual bath of some kind. And I think that one has questions at the end. A Witch Claims Power is more of a simple practice that you can do without any real materials besides like your altar space. Then A Witch Shapes Energy starts getting into literally shaping energy. And this reminded me a lot of a exercise that I've seen in a couple different books, mainly to increase your psychic abilities. And more specifically, I want to say clairvoyance, just because it's asking you to recall. Well, actually, it would be more than clairvoyance because it's also like touch and feel. But yeah, so really, really cool stuff so far. I'm really liking this. It's really easy to read and understand, and the way that it's sectioned off makes it very digestible if you're looking for a specific quality that you're trying to work with as a practitioner. I am now officially 50, no, well, technically 49, but 50 pages into the Changeling. And this is just such a good book to, I think it would be such a good book to do a whole Patreon, like, read along / work along with me prompt. Like, it would just be chef's kiss, especially as, or for, I should say, people who are trying to either reassess their outlook on their craft, or also new witchy poos. I like saying witchy poos. I think it's so cute. But yeah, so I'm on page 49 and I stopped here. And I think that I am going to definitely read this book in parts, or I should say I'm going to upload it in parts. And I'm just going to share with you a couple little more things. I'm doing my best to condense this. I really am, but you know me. So it seems like the theme continues. We're gonna get the numbered exercise or a quality of a witch, and then we're going to get anywhere from a couple paragraphs to 1 to 2 pages of an intro to why that's a quality. Then we either get one of these or both of these, which include an exercise and questions, and then sometimes a type of chant or poem. I've also, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I've been color coding tabs to signify a couple different things. One of them are things that I want to share on the tubes. Another one being exercises that I want to come back to and tweak because I liked the idea or a piece of them, but I want to modify them for my personal practice. And then, excuse me. And then the other one just being like cool note or one of my favorite like little parts that I may necessarily not care to share with everybody, but I know that it like touched me in a certain way. Anyways, he does a very good job of attempting to include as many people as possible. And by that I mean that he talks about the spectrum of aphantasia. And he also gives, you know, some tips on how to go about dealing with that. Aphantasia and how to go about knowing and feeling certain things in a few brief paragraphs. But then he goes into practicing that. And I thought that was really, really good because I don't think that, I mean, maybe more now, but like the older books didn't really touch on that. It was kind of like either you can visualize this or you're going to have to figure out how you can visualize this. And I thought that was just really cool. And then he does a couple of different exercises to practice and build upon sensing energies. And he doesn't do it in a super cookie cutter way. He kind of adds his own twist to it, which is nice because when you're trying to learn to sense energy, it can get really boring, I think, if you're expecting to see something right away, but then you're told to just keep doing it the same way over and over again, and then eventually it's going to happen. And this is just maybe a creative twist to be able to trick yourself into thinking that you're doing it differently when it's almost the same thing. It's just you're prompting yourself differently. Let's see what else. I did want to read this part because it's been kind of like a very key thing for me lately. And he says, this flowing of energy can feel to me at times like opening to power, as if all I have to do is let myself be a little more liminal, a little less concrete, and allow it to move through me. I love that he said that, because we are very concrete and we're very aware of that. So when we expect our psychic abilities to show, like, or that they're growing, we want also those to imitate our concrete reality, and that is not the way that they show up. Not only are they not concrete, but at least in my experience, they are extremely subtle. And when you go from being very loud, very big, very physical, and then you switch over to trying to tune into these subtle energies, it can become really difficult, because you are going from one extreme, I don't want to say to another, because I don't think it's an extreme, and I don't think it's the opposite of that, but it's kind of like you have to turn down the volume. And that's one of the reasons why I think body-centered practices are so key to being able to tune in to subtle energies and psychic abilities. Because if you can ground your body, and that in turn, for me anyway, really pulls my mind, my ego mind, out of the equation, and it allows me to actually be able to listen to these subtle energies, or to see or to feel these subtle energies. So I really like that he said that. And then the last thing I'm gonna leave you with before I completely finish this video, because it's, I think, gonna be already like, I don't know, less than 20 minutes hopefully. But he says, if you feel like you are making it all up at first, you are on the right track. I am a large supporter of that comment. I was going to say so many other things that were not fitting. I think that in order for you to be able to astral travel, in order for you to be able to do a proper shamanic journeying, or I don't want to say the word proper, but to really let yourself go and go on this journey and explore and do all these things, you need to really open your imagination, and also let the judging part of your mind go. And because that is much easier said than done, and when you're in the middle of working on these things, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, because you're not faking it, but you have to start convincing yourself that what you're seeing is there. And then eventually you'll let go of the control, and you'll be able to, I don't want to say distinguish, but be convinced, maybe on a milder level. I don't know how to say these words, because for everybody it's going to be different. But distinguish, when you are just daydreaming versus when you're astral traveling versus when you're journeying. And that is something that I'm lucky I did not struggle with. I know a lot of people struggle with that. I think I doubted it for like maybe, I don't know, there's not even a time frame for it. I don't even want to say like a day or a week, because it was just so quick. Like, I hear people struggle to astral travel, or believe that they're astral traveling, or do shamanic journeys and not get their downloads. And for me, I didn't doubt what I was doing, so I feel like it just flowed so much more easily. That is not to say that I don't take it for granted sometimes, because I do find myself wanting more than what I'm getting at times, and I think that's my witchy ego. But I tell that bitch to calm down. I mean, I tell my cute little ego to take a back seat.